7 minutes, so let's go to work, guys. Okay, we're going to start now with item 18. Do we have Robert? Okay, Robert's sitting on my right today. Okay. Road Repair and Accountability Act. Robert.
There we go. Commissioners, tab 18 is noticed as an action item. However, no action is recommended at this meeting. An update of SP1 activities since the August meeting will be presented by Commission staff through tabs 19 through 22. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, quick.
That was brief. Well, good. We're now going to move on to item 19, an update on active transportation program cycle 4. Lori.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an information item to provide an update on the 2019 Active Transportation Program, also known as Cycle 4. Project applications were due to Caltrans by July 31st. We received 554 applications. These applications are being evaluated and consensus scored by 51 evaluator teams. The consensus scores were due to Commission staff by October 8th. We've received most of the scores. A few teams were granted extensions due to unforeseen circumstances. All of the applications are also being reviewed by Commission staff to double-check the evaluator scoring and to identify any scoring anomalies. Caltrans staff is also reviewing the applications for eligibility and deliverability. Staff recommendations for the statewide and small urban and rural components will be posted by December 31st, with programming recommendations for the small urban and rural components being presented at the January 2019 Commission meeting, and the MPO component at the June 2019 Commission meeting. Next, I'd like to provide the Commissioners and the audience some statistics from the cycle in comparison to the last cycle to provide some context. The programming years for this cycle there's 4 programming years, 1920 to 22-23. The last cycle, we had 2 programming years, 1920 and 2021. The funds available this cycle are $445 million. Last cycle, it was $263 million. The total number of projects submitted was 554 this cycle, 447 last cycle. 109 in this cycle are in the small urban and rural component. 90 was last cycle in the small urban and rural. The total ATP request overall this cycle is $2.23 billion. Last cycle it was $965.5 million. The average request ATP amount this cycle is $4 million. And last cycle, it was a little over $2 million. And then, as you know, we had 5 different applications this time for the application types. And so I'll let you know how many of each type we've received. The most of them came from the infrastructure medium size. We've received 214. That's 39%. Infrastructure small, 141. That's 25%. Infrastructure large is 92 at 17%. Infrastructure plus non-infrastructure, medium size, that's 34, that's 6%. Non-infrastructure, we've received 29 applications or 5%. Plans, we've received 25 applications or 5%. Infrastructure plus non-infrastructure small projects, we've received 12 at 2%, and infrastructure plus non-infrastructure large projects, we've received 7 at 1%. So after the programming recommendations are out, we can do a little bit more analysis on what we are seeing this cycle and how it worked having the 5 different applications and things like that. But what we can tell right now is the average request is getting high. It's going up every time, and it was very high this time. We had a lot of large requests. So there seems to be a definite needs for some very large projects, active transportation projects. So that's good. And this is just an information item, but I'm happy to take any questions right now.
Any questions for Lori? I'm sorry, Commissioner Gometti. I was thinking Susan was going to say something. Yes, Commissioner Gometti.
This is, how many years are we into this now?
This is the fourth cycle.
Cycle. Are the applications getting better
Yes,
in terms of their completeness?
they are getting much better.
Thank you.
Okay, well, obviously you have a robust program, Lori.
Yes.
So thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
It's much, much appreciated. So, okay, we're going to change up order just a little bit, and you'll understand in just a moment. But like now, we're going to move to item 22. Alicia.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item 22 is an information item, and it is related to the Local Streets and Roads 2017-18 Expenditure Report. As has already been mentioned, we did in fact receive 100% reporting compliance in our fiscal year for this funding. This is the first cycle of the program, so it's pretty impressive to be able to state that we have 100%. In that vein, I would like to thank all of the regional transportation planning agencies, as well as the metropolitan planning organizations, in addition to the League of California Cities and the California State Association of Counties. In addition to that, there are a few staff members that we would like to specifically thank, or for my sanity, I need to thank them publicly at this time. And that is Alika Chengizi. Stand on up. Mabel Wong. And Mabel is one of our staff members from Caltrans who has been assisting us. And not here at this time is Jennifer Valeros. These three, and they tackled this on right away. And there were more than 6,000 total email correspondences sent out in a 45-day time period. There were more than 600 phone calls received. I can't say made or actually had, but 600 received for sure, in this time period. So the amount of effort that it took to have 100% compliance speaks volumes to the necessary, the need to have stakeholder involvement, to have good partnerships with our locals. And we held 5 technical training opportunities throughout the months of August to September, in which 346 of the jurisdictions participated. I am happy to say that the majority of those jurisdictions did not call us for technical assistance. So it worked, and we were very grateful for that. To get to the meat and potatoes of what we are all here for today, if you would like to turn to the second page of this item, we can give you a few of the outcomes as a result of the report that we received. So from the 537 cities and counties who submitted, we were able to obtain that $386.4 million had been apportioned to these cities and counties as of August 22nd, 2018. And we do report based on the state fiscal year. It is important to note that these funds are revenues that are collected within the state fiscal year, but there is a 6-week delay for each month in its collection to disbursement. So that means as of June 30th, 2018, there were $246.7 million dispersed to the cities and counties. That was 64% of the total apportionment amount for the fiscal year. $123.4 million of the RMRA funding was spent on fiscal year 2017-18 project activities that were performed by these cities and counties. This translates to 50% of their available fund within the fiscal year was spent in these RMRA local streets and roads funds. If you were to look at that against the overall total that was received in August, that was 32%. But overall, it still speaks volumes to the overall level of work that was being performed throughout the entire state as a result of these funds in the program. So there were 4,354 projects that were reported on. This does not mean that all 4,354 of these projects occurred within the fiscal year or that they are all using these funds in this fiscal year. There were 4,069 of those projects were a part of the original proposed project list that we received for funding eligibility. 3,655 of the total projects reported have some sort of schedulized status attached to them. So out of those, there were 1,030 completed projects, equating to $58.3 million in our local streets and roads RMRA funding. 936 of these projects were considered in progress by the end of the fiscal year, and this equated to $65 million of these funds being spent. 1,228 projects were carried over. This means that they did not occur within the state fiscal year, but are intended to move forward within the 18-19 fiscal year. 457 of the projects are actually intended to occur in outer years, so fiscal years 19-20 and anything further out from that. 703 of the originally proposed projects are no longer using RMRA funds in their delivery. Those funds have been redirected to other priorities that were added into these project lists that we found that are going to use those funds. And the projects that were originally listed were actually ended up by being delivered under other funding sources. And so all of that is accounted for in the report that you will actually be able to see on the Local Streets and Roads Program webpage. What we have as of this morning, what we were able to post onto the website is a summaries, a snapshot, city and county summary snapshot of all funding expenditures received and made within the state fiscal year, total number of projects for each city and county, as well as a summary to their activity. This is a narrative that all the cities and counties had an opportunity to provide and were asked to provide so that we were able to convey that in the reporting along with the numbers that they provided. I'm happy to answer any questions. One thing I would like to follow up with is that we will, in fact, be posting the detailed project lists related to these expenditures on our website by close of business on Friday. And before I forget, thank you Caltrans IT development team and staff for working so hard with us and obtaining, working with my crazy thoughts and middle of the night emails on how to have the system work. Because without that system, I don't think we would have had the response level that we received. And we would not be able to give you the numbers that we can give you today in a matter of 7 days from the date of us receiving 42% of the overall reports.
That's great. Thank you. Commissioner Gometti.
Alicia, thank you. Do you know what percentage of these projects were repaving?
I could generate that information for you within our system. What I can tell you is that out of the completed 1,030 projects, 881 of them were specifically construction roadway based. There were 88 of those projects that were in the pre-construction design. They use these funds in order to be able to advance to construction in the next fiscal year, which will also more than likely be using the RMRA funding as well. And then the remainder of the funds, the remainder of the completed projects of 61 projects were in procurement operational needs. So this is directly in the materials used or equipment used in order for roadway maintenance and paving. So we will be able to provide you a little bit more detail in the coming weeks that as a part of our final report. This is strictly a preliminary number run that we were able to do.
Could you include lane miles in that too?
We do have a metric in there where we're working to pull out that information, and it is something that we will be able to provide in our final report that is due to the legislature in December.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we will move on.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Robert.
I would like to ditto Alicia's comments and thanks to staff and Caltrans IT. I would also thank Alicia. What she doesn't point out is all those work she's doing, reviewing all the applications, what the team is doing is also building, developing testing, and implementing a new electronic tool that allowed all this to work. So it's a lot of work, so I appreciate, it wouldn't be here without that hard work, so I just thank you and great job.
I think he called you a pioneering woman there, Alicia. Good job.
Can you tell my husband?
Good job, thank you. Okay, now we will move on to item 23.
Thank you, Commissioners. Today, we will have two representatives. First, we would like to invite the Manteca Mayor, Steve DeBrum, to speak on behalf of the city and their transportation needs that they're currently facing. And then we will have a speaker from the League of California Cities come, whom I will introduce.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, Commissioners, Assemblyman Frazier, ladies and gentlemen who have traveled to San Joaquin County, welcome. We love you here. So, if you will just spend your tax dollars here, we would even love you more. So, it's something that's very important as we continue to look at everything that we look at. Manteca is a city of 81,000 people, growing, bustling, commuting, that we have more than 55% of our people who travel over the Altamont on a daily basis. But as we continue to move forward, Manteca will be receiving approximately $1.3 million annually, or $21.3 million over the next 10 years with SP1 funds. This will nearly double the amount of money that we have taken in to allocate it for street maintenance projects. This funding, along with the projects that are critical to able to maintain Manteca City streets, is good state of repair and to rehabilitate streets that are failing from the age and increased traffic roads. Manteca will be working on, thanks to SB1, and other sources of funding for transportation funds such as highway users tax account and any of the competitive pots of funding such as cap and trade, active transportation, congested corridors, and any other regional project the city will also benefit from. The city currently has budgeted the following 5 projects that are dependent on SB1 funding. The 2019 annual payment project, Mayor's Park subdivision payment, Springtime Estate payment improvement project, Main Street pavement improvement project, and Yosemite Avenue pavement program. The budget for these 5 projects combined is $9.2 million. The first 3 projects are largely dependent on SB1 funds. The 2019 annual payment project is partially funded with local sales tax revenue, which is insufficient, and to cover the cost of the project. SB1 funds will allow the program to move forward. The second and third projects are almost entirely dependent on SB1 dollars. These are both older subdivisions which our pavement has failed and requires reconstruction. Without SB1, there cannot be any city resources available to repair these streets. And the last 2 projects are for rehabilitation of 2 major collectors in the city. These projects were originally funded with RSTP funds, but increasing costs have delayed the projects and their completion in jeopardy. And fortunately, SB1 funds are arriving just as they are needed to ensure that we can fully fund these critical projects. In addition to the projects above, the city relies on a mix of state, federal, and local funds to maintain our streets. Prior analysis has shown that nearly $5 million per year is to maintain city streets, but we probably only have about half of that in our own coffers. So SB1 funding, as in many things, is critical to improving the quality of maintenance and projects that we go along on a go-forward basis. Additionally, it would be great if we could focus on what transportation issues are important to the city. One of the primary examples of all Manteca residents is safe streets and sidewalks, and as one of the fastest growing communities in the Central Valley of California, Manteca needs to ensure we can maintain our growing number of streets. Providing well-maintained streets improves access, safety for drivers, bikers, and pedestrians, and the foundation of building and ensuring the vibrant community that Manteca has become. SB1 is a critical piece of the puzzle. Now, let me talk about my passion. My passion is Highway 99 and 120. When you have more than 1,600 accidents over a 10-year span, 900 injuries, 10 deaths, that is too much. When we look at what's taking place on the 99 was built for something far less than what we see today. When you have, might have been built for 80,000 cars, and you might have 100, 120 a day. When you start to look at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, as the people from Modesto will attest to, you get out there and then all of a sudden it's just backed up. But the key element through the whole thing here is public safety, the saving of lives of the men and women who travel that road. And additionally, we're finding people who will find an access route. They may go to 132. They may go to Ripon. They may decide to go north, go through Stockton, then come back around on the 99, than to get out on that treacherous road of the 120. 120 was once called Blood Alley. Then a lot of active work was done by the people of the community. But we're back to there again. I live on Austin Road, and many times I will travel, get on the 99, jump on the 120 to head to City Hall. I can't tell you the number of times that I will see our emergency vehicles on the side of the road along with CHP or the individuals of our police department supporting those individuals who are less fortunate and have been in an accident. It is really something that we really need to look at. And I ask for your support. The project has been 2 times, as we've gone back to DC for the Council of Governments, One Voice trip has been the primary focus of what we're back there for. We're seeking federal assistance. We're seeking state assistance. We're looking for every avenue that we can take in order to protect everyone who travels that road. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I conclude my comments, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Next, we will have Ronnie Berger with the League of California Cities speaking on the outcomes and results from the 2018 California Statewide Local Streets and Roads Needs Assessment Report.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the Commission. Want to also thank the Mayor for Manteca from really talking about the real impacts for everyday people in terms of what these improvements mean within their communities. At the League of California Cities, as a representative, I kind of see these issues from a 30,000-foot level, and so I think we really should appreciate kind of those personal stories for why these improvements are so important. And so I'm here today to present on some of the highlights from the Local Streets and Roads Needs Assessment Report, the 2018 update, which is this big document. I didn't print it out because I would have killed a lot of trees if I did that, but this entire report is available for free on our website. It's called, the link is www.savecaliforniastreets.org, and you can download a PDF, a fact sheet, and some other additional materials that are part of this report. I did print out, and you should have with you the executive summary, and so I did provide that for the commissioners. So if you want to take a look at that, I will reference some of the highlights in that document as part of this presentation. So Again, going back to, I should also mention that I'm here not only on behalf of the League of California Cities, but also on behalf of the California State Association of Counties. My colleague, Kiana Valentine, who's a rock star on these issues, unfortunately couldn't be here today. She had a last-minute conflict, but she did want me to convey that she would have liked to be here for this part of this presentation. So, again, the goal of the California statewide local streets and roads needs assessment report, since we first started this project back in 2006, with the results first printed in 2008. So it's actually our 10th anniversary and 6th kind of edition of this report. Is to educate the public and decision makers at really all levels of government about the investments needed to provide California with a seamless, safe, and efficient transportation system. The biennial report presents critical analysis of the condition and funding requirements for California's local streets, roads, bridges, sidewalks, and other essential components, as were highlighted by the mayor of Manteca as well. The findings have been really invaluable for developing policy and funding solutions, including the funding solutions in SB1 that address our critical infrastructure needs, understanding trade-offs when contemplating policy and funding decisions, and comprehending the economic and public safety impacts of delaying local street and road maintenance. Previous editions of this report have warned every other year that without an influx of new revenue, the system would continue to deteriorate. And the longer we go kicking the can down the proverbial road, the more expensive those repairs would become, and the faster those roads would deteriorate. And so every edition of this report has basically confirmed that. This 2018 report, because of SB1, also evaluates the impacts that SB1 has on the entire local street and road system, and then also what would happen if that money went away, because I think that's a real possibility, given that the voters may have a chance to decide that in November. And I think, you know, the findings in the 2018 report are both exciting and cautionary. With the infusion of over $15 billion for local streets and roads and direct subventions, that's direct apportionments to cities and counties, that's no middleman, that's not a competitive award, that's a check directly from state controller's office into a city or county account for road maintenance rehabilitation. That's about double the amount of money for every city and county throughout the state. So we can't say how fortunate we are to have had SB1 and that level of funding, largest level of investment that we've seen in a generation, definitely since at least 1994 at the very earliest. And if you think about the type of music you were listening to back in 1994, times were a lot different back then. So you couple the investment, the $15 billion, with improving technologies, and for the first time, we are able to show in this report that our funding shortfall, which was previously tagged at about $70 billion over the next 10 years, has actually been reduced to $55 billion over the next 10 years. So we actually see an $18 billion decrease in the funding shortfalls. Obviously, SB1 isn't going to meet all of the needs for every individual mode of transportation, but we are going to see dramatic improvement on our local streets and road system as a result of SB1. If you look at page 4 of the executive summary, some of the benefits, just to kind of highlight, as a result of SB1, will actually help our cities and counties prevent roads from failing, and actually allow us to stabilize road conditions on a statewide average in the aggregate. However, when you look more closely at the data, we're actually able to bring over 2/3 of the network, local streets and roads network, into a state of good repair. Without SB1, however, on the converse, less than half of the system will be in a state of good repair. It'll be in the at-risk condition. And the shortfall would actually grow by an additional $12 billion. And so, as you can imagine, that's about a $30 billion swing if SB1 were to go away. Ultimately, these improvements will provide Californians safer, more efficient mobility options that support a strong economy and improve quality of life. Again, over the last 10 years from when we first started this report, we've seen conditions simply get worse across the state in just about every county. When we first did this report in 2008, there were about 15 counties that were in the green category, or what you would consider pavements with good condition. In the 2008 report, that's dropped down to about 5. And so SB1 will finally allow us to turn a very important corner, and so long as it stays, we should be able to see the dramatic improvements across all of the different transportation modes, local streets and roads included. And so with that, I'll conclude my report and be available for any questions if there are any from the commissioners.
Are there any questions? Yes, Chair Frazier.
Thank you for that report. I just want to say that I feel like a proud papa.
I felt like we were in the choir, so. And I tried to see what music were we listening to in 94.
Can't touch these. That was a 94.
Whoa, yeah. Did I say keep your day job? I know.
Sounded way better in the shower.
Blew out his eardrums and the headphone and the camera, but
Okay, we're working hard here, so. We will, thank you very much, Ronnie.
thank you.
And appreciate the update. So now we will move to item 24, which is Chris, Transportation Asset Management Plan update.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item 24 is the Transportation Asset Management Plan Annual Benchmark Performance Update. So Senate Bill 486 requires the department to provide annual benchmark performance updates for the 4 primary asset classes established by the Commission in October of 2017. In a brief moment here, Mike Johnson's going to be providing you with a briefing on the accomplishments relative to those established benchmarks, and this is an information item. At the March 2018 meeting, the Commission approved benchmarks for these primary assets, which include Class 1 to Class 3 pavements, bridges and tunnels, drainage systems or culverts, and the transportation management system elements. The department's done very well in meeting these established benchmarks for most of the asset classes, and they're trending towards meeting all benchmarks. Senate Bill 1 requires the department to fix an additional 500 bridges above historic levels. This year, the department's used a mixture of maintenance and shop contracts to fix 84 bridges above historic levels. And they are going to be working on future projects, which will be a little more challenging and complex than what they've done with the 84 here, but nonetheless, they're making progress there as well. And then additionally, Mike's going to be updating you on the status of efforts by the department to locate all the culverts and drainage systems and provide GIS location and digital documentation of these systems for future efforts. With that, Mike?
Good afternoon, Chair Inman, Commissioners. I would say Assemblyman, but not at the moment. I'm here today to give you an update on what we're doing or how we're doing with the highway system and these key components that the Commission has asked the Department to focus on. As Chris mentioned, the Commission adopted guidelines that require Caltrans to establish a baseline by which we could measure accomplishments over time. The department did that in March of 2018, so a few months back. The Commission adopted that, and this presentation will provide an update from that March initial baseline. So just as a quick refresher, we're using a 4-step process. We begin with the most recent known condition of our assets, and that changes over time depending on the asset. Then we have to look at the effects of deterioration on those assets going forward in time. And then we look at what our project stream does. So if our project stream is accomplishing more than the deterioration, then we're gaining ground. And if our project stream is not accomplishing more than deterioration, then we're losing ground. But adding into the complexity is that the inventory is changing on some of these assets. So it's not really a static overall inventory that we're dealing with. But we look at these 4 things, and what I'm going to present and what you have in the book item is sort of the net effect of all of those things. So, one question you might have is, well, why are these things changing? What causes this to change over time? And there's really 4 big drivers of change. Certainly, the inventory changing is going to have an impact. As inspections or pavement surveys are completed, conditions of the assets might change. And then project composition. So, the composition of the shop there's amendments, there's changes, there's things coming in and out of the shop all the time in actions that this commission's taking. What is the net effect of all of that? And then, internally within Caltrans, this performance-driven asset management approach, it's new to the department. We've implemented it, but we're finding that there are some things in the data that, in some cases, we got to go back and clean it up and bring it forward. And this is particularly true with projects that have been in the shop for a while or been in prior shops and then carry forward into the current one. We don't necessarily have the same performance information that we have on projects that are now being amended in. So these are the big drivers of change. I want to introduce this concept of this project book to you. This is a new document, and it's a pretty integral part now of the way we're managing the shop assets. What the project book is a very transparent listing of the next 10 years worth of shop projects, simply stated. There's over 3,100 projects listed in this book. This book is fiscally constrained, and the performance is rebalanced every quarter. So as these changes happen, the project composition has to react so that we get to the performance goals, or we ensure that we're getting the performance goals every quarter. This book was one of the central themes in a recent Lean Six Sigma that we did internally on looking at how to make the planning to programming processes of the shop more efficient. And this book now controls or in effect limits what can go into formal project planning and then ultimately into programming. So if you are in the book, you're insured to be fiscally constrained and you're insured to hit the performance targets that we need, and that kind of gives you a green light into formal planning and programming. This is a brand new concept. We published the first book reflective of all the commission actions through March, but in addition to the commission actions in the 2018 shop, we have 2 years of formal planning after that, and then we have all the conceptual projects that all the districts are lining up in those last 3 years of this 10-year period. So all of that is in this book. It's publicly available on the website shown on the slide. It's our way of being completely and brutally transparent about where all of our money is going in the shop, inclusive of the SP1 money, but it's also the vehicle that we're using to ensure that we get to the place we're intending to get to in terms of the performance. So what we've done, there's a total of 17 graphs in the book item. I'm not going to go through all of them, otherwise you would not hear anybody else the rest of the afternoon. But I am going to highlight 2. One is pavement class 1, and for just a refresher, class 1 pavement is about half of all pavement on the state highway system. It represents all interstates and all freight routes. So these are our busiest highways. So in March, we came in with the gray line. So each of those little circles represents a year, and we do this analysis through 10 years of time. For 17-18, we're trending a little bit ahead of where we thought we would be, but certainly within our what we call our band of uncertainty, which is that little shaded band behind there. This is not, an exact science. There's lots of variability in here. When projects accomplishments are realized, the condition changing, all of those things. But for class 1 pavement, we're trending a little bit better, which is very positive news. For bridge and tunnels, it's a little bit different story. We're still within our expected band, so in my mind, we're still on track. But this is one where we're trending slightly below where we thought we would be. And this is primarily being driven by new inspections that are being done that are identifying more bridges as being fair than we previously had before. So we'll continue to watch this, but I think it's still well within our expected area of performance. There were a couple other metrics that were in SB1. One is this concept of fix an additional 500 bridges. And in order to report out on this, a couple things had to happen first. One is a definition of what constitutes a fix had to be defined, and that was done. And then additionally, we had to establish what the historic deliverable fixes were to then measure the 500 on top of that. So we have done all of that. And for 17-18, as Chris mentioned, we delivered 84 bridges towards that 500. So if we were looking completely straight line, we would be looking for 50 a year. We did 84. I think that's primarily due to some pent-up work that was ready to go. So that's a good news story here. There's one other metric that's mentioned in SB1, that's level of service. The level of service is an annual sampling that the department does through our maintenance program. And the specific portions of the level of service that were included in SB1 are for the cracking of pavement and potholes. We haven't had an updated level of service since March, so there's nothing really new to report. But I will note that this is kind of a lagging measure. In other words, I can't project it out because there's no, there's projects, but in this case, I don't know where they're going to go look. It's a randomized sampling that they do. So in spring of 2019, we'll get our updated level of service score. Then we'll be able to bring that to the commission with an update of how we're doing on level of service. So that really concludes, well, let me summarize. So first, we're on track to achieve SB1 performance targets. That's great. Well, for me personally, more importantly, I think our asset management framework is working. We are focused on performance. We're updating it. Literally the entire culture of the department is now focused on performance. And I've been involved with the shop for many, many years. The culture and the focus to achieving outcomes is unlike we've seen before. That's a very positive thing for asset management. Our asset management approach is still maturing, so we're doing well. At this time, we were not even required to have a plan in place, and I would say we have a whole program stood up. So that's very positive. But I think from the commission standpoint, just to set realistic expectations, these things are going to bop around. It's just a fact. There's 3,100 projects. There's ongoing inspections. There's things happening out there. We might have to come back and adjust our deterioration models if we find we're not tracking where we want to be, or if we're, overestimating how much deterioration is going to occur. So we will continue to evolve that in subsequent annual reports, and we'll be back to keep you guys apprised of how things are going. That now concludes my presentation, although I will say that I did receive one question, and so if I can just address that head on, then we can open it up for general questions. So the question had to do with our fair condition culvert. So I've included the graph up here on the slide. We are tracking exactly where we projected we would be in March with our projects. But there is the gap, and that gap is noted with that blue arrow between where we project to be and where the commission asset management goals were. To close that gap, we need people. This isn't a This isn't a case where we need to go replace culverts. This is a case where we need to go clean out the culverts. So we need maintenance workers, we need boots on the ground to go do this work. This reporting and this gap is consistent with the asset management plan that the commission adopted and the state highway system management plan. So we've been consistently identifying this gap. However, the really good news here is that the department did request and did receive additional resources to put to closing this gap. And we are in the process now of ramping up this program with additional people, in the order of 50 additional people statewide that we're putting towards this problem. They need to be trained. We need to buy additional little robots that crawl through these culverts. But I hope to be able to show a changed slope on this line in the very near future through the efforts of these crews. So with that, if there's any additional questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, I have a first question by Commissioner Manteca, and then we'll go to Chair Frazier and then to Gilmetti.
Well, first of all, thank you, Michael. You actually answered the question I had regarding culverts. So, because I saw that on the report, and obviously the concern being damaged culverts can end up causing road degradation and all kinds of other safety problems. And I just wanted to say, this is an outstanding report. You should be congratulated and your entire team for really doing a good job on something that's so important to the state. And this is really the promise of SB1, and that's to deliver on this part of the system. And I think you've done a great job, so thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my understanding is the agency recognizes the 1993 AASHTO spec, and that if we were to upgrade the recognition of an additional spec, that our longevity would actually increase on the highways?
Spec with regard to what, the design spec?
The design spec and pavement model?
Well, I mean, certainly the design specs will have a design life. For example, the design spec for bridges will have a 75-year design life.
But I'm just strictly talking pavement.
Right, so whether you can achieve that design life is the question. And in California, we have a transportation system that literally gets pounded with trucks coming out of our ports, carrying lots of goods. We've got, as everybody in this room knows, some of the most heavily traveled and congested highways. So I think it would be an enhancement to get longer life if we realize it. In terms of bringing it into the benchmarks, we would see that at the point that we start seeing better measured condition year after year.
And so you go to my second question, when you talk about longevity from being hammered by trucks and whatnot, how adaptive is your asset management plan when you talk about Amazon coming in and increasing an impact, as the largest employer in the area, and you're looking at a 10-year plan?
Well, so the 10-year plan is updated every 2 years. So in January of 2019, I'll be back before you with the 2019 State Highway System Management Plan. And in effect, every other year, we're rebaselining the entire system. So we're looking at existing conditions. We redo the entire gap analysis. We in effect, can reallocate funds to where the needs are. So within a 2-year time period, we could recognize a new employer like Amazon in this area.
Good to know. So the last question would be, so if you have an ongoing issue in areas that have soil conditions that aren't conducive and they continue to pothole, alligator, break down, what process do you have that says, okay, this isn't working anymore, we need to, go to another, instead of throwing money at a project and continually every 2 years revamping it with asphalt or whatever it is, or the soil condition needs to be bolstered? What do you have in that plan to identify that need?
Well, I think the biggest tool we have, thanks in large part to yourself, is the funds to actually fix it right. And in the past, we haven't always had the funds to fix it right. So in the scenario you defined, we might have to go in and overlay it, even though we know that's not the best engineering solution because that's all we can afford. So I think having the funding that we have available to us today allows us to get in and fix those locations properly.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gilmetti.
Michael, thank you. I think that was a terrific report. You may have answered this while you, for Assemblyman Frazier, but this project book, I'm trying to figure out how it really works. Now, you said that it's for 10 years, but you rebalance it quarterly. Are you dropping a quarter and adding a quarter, so by the time you get to your 2-year review, you already know what it looks like?
No, so just to clarify, every 2 years, we will be back in front of this commission with the State Highway System Management Plan. That's a complete, brand-new
Right.
performance gap analysis. That sort of sets our funding levels for each district, for each asset going forward in time. In terms of the rebalancing, there are things that are happening constantly. There's new bridge inspections, 500 a month being done. So as that is realized, it may mean that we were meeting a target before, but new inspections came in and things were not quite as you thought they were going to be. Now you need to do additional bridge work. So within this project portfolio, there's all sorts of variety of work in there. So we're putting a premium on hitting these focus areas that the commission has asked us to do. So if you're going to, if you need to do additional bridge work, you might need to go in here and look at what else you've got in your plan that you can either, look at doing it more efficiently or differently in order to free up funding to do additional bridge work.
Thank
So
you.
that's what's updated every quarter.
Yes, Commissioner Van Konynenberg?
Mike, I just want to thank you. I know this was a hard baby to birth, and now you're raising this toddler, and you're
Yeah.
doing a good job, so thank you.
Thank you.
We've got lots of parental, yes, Commissioner Berg.
Excellent report. In the next report, I'd really be interested in the technology changes that are being utilized. For instance, the inspection of the culvert site, are some of them being done by some new technology, whether it's robots or whatever? I'd also be really interested in the upgrade and the change in technology in terms of some of the pavement that might give up longevity.
Great, thank you. I did fail to mention earlier on that as we're redeploying these additional people, and it was a question that Commissioner Von Konynenberg had, we are fully geolocating all of our assets, not just the culverts. In fact, we are actively working on an enterprise asset management software that we're working through the approval processes with the Department of Technology that will bring together an integrated asset repository all in GIS. And we're already looking at some of this now, where we can look at the pavement and the conditions, and we can overlay not only the approved shop, but we can overlay the entire project book to see and ensure that where we need to work on pavement, we're actually working on pavement. So there is a lot going on in the technology. It's a pretty time-consuming process to get all the approvals, but we're more than halfway through with the approvals on our enterprise asset management software.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, we're going to have to pick up our pace here. We're going to be working the night shift here, so. Just for clarification, we did pass over 20 and 21. We're going to take those after item 43 in the essence of being efficient on our end. So speaking of efficiencies, we will go to item 25. Robert?
Commissioners, tab 25 is Caltrans's annual efficiency report. This is an information item that will be presented by Caltrans. Staff reviewed the report, and we were supportive of the work Caltrans has done, and look forward to working with Caltrans as they expand the efficiency measures into new areas and identify new measures.
So James, tell us 2 minutes about your baby here.
Wow. That's an expectation. Madam Chair, Commissioners, Assemblyman Frazier, my name is Jim Davis. I'm the acting SB1 Program Manager. Yes, this is my third job in 6 months.
Good job.
And I'm reporting on our first. And I'm on my reporting on the first annual efficiency report by the department. SB1 requires Caltrans to implement efficiencies in the neighborhood of $100 million We provide you an interim report in January. We also did a scan of other Department of Transportation to see what efficiencies that they were using. They're using very similar efficiencies that we are using, looking at value analysis, lean processes, replacing their light bulbs with LEDs, and using CMGC procurement methodology. Since our presentation to you, the Inspector General has gone through our interim report and provided us feedback. We've incorporated that feedback, and I am pleased to present that Caltrans has generated $133 million in efficiencies. Now, that's the short 2-minute version. I can keep going, or that's the 2-minute version.
Don't talk yourself out of Yahoo.
Hoorah.
Thanks for your brevity, Jim. Questions? Do we have questions? I do want to respect that a lot of work went into this. So, are there any questions? Okay. Okay. Keep your efficiency hat on. We appreciate it. So, what's your next job, Jim?
I'm going to ask the boss.
We do have an opening. Oh, no. We would welcome you. I'm kidding. We need to move on. Item 26, which is our Toll Bridge seismic retrofit. Chris, you're up.
Yes. So, Commissioners, item 26 is an information item, and I'm going to provide you with a brief update on the Toll Bridge retrofit program. So, at the request of the Joint Legislative Audit Committee, the California State Auditor over the last year performed an audit related to the management of the program as it nears its completion. And it prepared a comprehensive report on its findings in August of 2018, and really good news stories here. The report concludes that the implementation of a robust oversight process, and that is our Toll Bridge Oversight Committee, which is the Caltrans Director, Director Berman, the MTC Executive Director, currently Steve Heminger, and then our Commission Executive Director, Susan Branson. So it concludes that this oversight process and the effective risk management program that was established through legislation with Assembly Bill 144 in 2005 was instrumental in achieving significant cost avoidance and savings within the program. The report summarizes that the Oversight Committee decisions and management resulted in cost avoidance and savings totaling at least $505 million. It also concludes that the effective implementation of risk management played a critical role in preventing more than $455 million in potential costs and 7 years in probable delays. And a really good, excellent example of that is the management of the demolition of the Old Bay Bridge starting in 2014 using a CMGC program. It helped us to shave off about $94 million. The Oversight Committee made decisions, as you'll recall, to change the means and methods, allowing us to use implosion to get that done. And it also shaved 4 years from the project schedule. Finally, the report concludes that the Toll Bridge program's on track to finish up here at the end of the year, hopefully in December of this year. $34 million below budget, the budget established by AB 144. And it also recommends to the legislature that all future projects estimated to cost more than $500 million be managed by an oversight committee process such as this one, and that comprehensive risk management plan should be implemented and managed. So everyone may or may not be aware, the departments have successfully imploded the last 2 foundations. They're in the process of building public access at the Oakland Shore and on Yerba Buena Island, and they're on track to get all of the major marine things done and get all of that out of the bay, and that's, as we said, 4 years ahead of schedule. One other thing I want to say is being involved with the CMGC program, as Susan pointed out earlier, it's a great process, and we're so glad to have that, and it helps us take risk out. But even with good programs like that, it takes people to get the projects done. I just want to take a brief moment. You know, one of these people was Trin Lai. He was our project engineer for the department on this project. He worked with me, and Trin came to me back in June of last year when he heard that we were going to go from advanced planning study to a contract negotiated with our contractor in the CMGC process, and he wanted to be a part of that. He was innovative. He was just a great worker. He's a person you can't replace. And sadly, I found out this morning that Trent, so on behalf of all my fellow colleagues at District 4 and the department, I just want to say recognize Trent here for all of his efforts. He was involved with the Toll Bridge program on many of the projects, and we would not be where we're at now, being able to close out the program, getting this public access delivered without all of his efforts. And we found out this morning that he lost a battle with cancer that he's had over the last 4 or 5 months. So Trin moved really fast. He knows we're behind. He wouldn't want a full minute of silence, but if we could have just 5 seconds here before I entertain any questions, that'd be great. Thank you. And with that, I'll entertain any questions,
Thank you.
comments.
Do we have any questions?
Just
Yes.
a comment, if I could. I'm glad that Chris mentioned the audit, and I had read that when it came out, and it's probably worth recognizing the hard work of Susan and Lori, as well as Steve Heminger, the 3-member Toll Bridge Oversight Committee and their predecessors, because that was really one of the best audits I've ever read in terms of lack of criticism, and then going forward, it was more, this is the model that should be emulated. So again, for all the work of the TB-POC, thank you for your efforts.
You might have gotten yourself some more work, Susan.
Well, no, as Secretary Annis, I appreciate that, and I do recognize that my predecessors were intricately, they were a real part of making a report like that possible. On the TB-POC, I did see John Barna here. I don't know if he still is, but there were he's in the back row, my former boss. So anyways, there's a number of former members to the TB-POC that all brought this excellent report, made the excellent report possible.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any questions at all, or we're finished with that item? Okay, then we will move, Terry, to informational calendar.
Thank you. Commissioners, the next 14 items, numbers 27 through 40, are informational items deemed by staff not to raise any issues, and therefore individual items will not be presented unless specifically requested by a commissioner.
Yes, Commissioner.
I did have some questions about item 34, but the San Joaquin Rail Commission has reached out to me. We're going to meet offline on that, okay?
Okay, thank you. We appreciate that. Okay, so that was information only, so thank you, Terry. Now I believe, are we going to go to the recusal? Oh, we're going to.
Just pull 43 and 57.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to.
Okay. Okay, so Terry, get us smoothly through the next section.
Okay, I got it. Okay, Commissioners, there are 15 items that we're going to look at now on the consent calendar. We're pulling items 43 and 57 until later. So you'll be looking at items 41, 42, and 44 through 56. Please note the following change to the consent calendar as noted on the change list. Item number 56, there's a change to the title of one project in the LPP formulaic program. The revised title is the Losan SD Subdivision Signal Respacing Optimization Project. Okay. And with this change, Commission staff recommends the approval of the 15 items that I noted on the consent calendar.
So moved.
Oh goodness, that was unison, so I'm going to have to pick this out. So I believe I heard a motion by Commissioner Van Konynenberg and a second by Commissioner Gardino. And so is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Okay, now I need to recuse myself, and before you all rouse me, let me explain. Item 43, the very last item, my employer, Ed Roski Majestic Realty, owns property along the perimeter of that, so I will recuse myself. And in addition to that, item 43, the Rail to Redlands project, item 57, the Rail to Redlands project, item 73, the Rail to Redlands project, item 85, the Rail to Redlands project, and item 110, the Rail to Redlands project. That's hard to say. And item 20 and item 21, the Rail to Redlands projects are included in that. So I will step out. I serve as a volunteer trustee at the University of Redlands. It is not my alma mater, but I'm happy to be committed to giving back to our community. So with that, I will pass the gavel to my vice chair, Commissioner Rob.
Thank you. That's the gift that keeps on giving. Okay, we're going to go to item number 20.
Yes.
And Christine Orden is going to give us an introduction to that.
Thank you. Commissioners, tab 20 is an action item to amend the 2018 Local Partnership Formulaic Program of Projects. The 2018 Local Partnership Formulaic Program is funded for $100 million annually in state funds authorized by Senate Bill 1 that are appropriated from the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Account for fiscal year 17-18 and 18-19. This amendment will result in a new total of 69 projects for 33 agencies, a total programmed amount of $176.5 million in fiscal year 17-18 and 18-19. The remaining $23.5 million can be programmed through June 30th, 2020. This item is consistent with the Local Partnership Program guidelines and the adopted formulaic program. Therefore, staff recommends your approval of tab 20 as presented in the staff recommendation.
Move it.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gilmetti and a second by Commissioner, I think it was Paul, wasn't it? Okay, Commissioner Paul. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, let's go to,
21.
oh, to 21 as well? Okay, is 21 one that she recused herself from? Oh, she did. Okay, we're going to do 21 as well.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, tab 21 is an action item to adopt the 2019 Local Partnership Formulaic Program of Projects. The 2019 Local Partnership Formulaic Program, again, is funded with $100 million annually in state funds authorized by Senate Bill 1, appropriated funds from the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Account for fiscal years 2019 and 2020. On June 27, 2018, the Commission adopted the 2019 Local Partnership Formulaic Program Share Distribution for fiscal year 2019-20. Eligible jurisdictions outlined in the share distribution submitted project proposals by August 29, 2018 deadline. Commission staff reviewed the project proposal for compliance with the guidelines. Based on a thorough project review and correspondence with applicants, staff drafted and posted recommendations on the program of projects to the Commission's website on September 26, 2018. Through this process, Commission staff ensured applicant agencies had an opportunity to verify, review, and request modifications prior to adoption. Of the 40 agencies eligible for the program, 22 agencies submitted 33 projects for programming, and all 33 projects are recommended for programming. The current program of projects will program a total of $83.9 million that includes Cycle 1 formulaic unprogrammed shares of $11 million over fiscal years 2019-20. The program of projects will include a diverse and important transportation projects throughout the state. I would like to note there is a replacement book item noted in yellow. 18 agencies elected not to apply for program at this time. The Local Partnership Program guidelines allow all agencies with adopted 2019 formulaic shares to nominate projects for programming through the end of the subsequent cycle, June 2021. I would like to thank Matthew Yozgat and Juan Guzman for their assistance on this item. Both CTC staff members played an integral part in moving this program of projects to adoption.
This item is consistent with the local partnership program guidelines. Therefore, staff recommends your approval of tab 21 as presented in the staff recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Medapper and a second by Commissioner Burke. Any comments? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Yes. Okay, now we're going to go to item number 43.
Sure.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item 43 is an action item. The item contains 20 projects, and all environmental impacts have been mitigated to less than significant levels. Staff recommends your approval.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Gometti and a second by Commissioner Medapper. Did I get that one right? Oh, Commissioner Paul did that. Yes. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We are now to 57.
Commissioners, tab 57 is an action item to approve a technical adjustment to the 2018 Local Partnership Competitive Program. Specifically, this technical adjustment is to clarify the project description of the Capital Southeast Connector, segment D3, on the project list in attachment B of the book item. The item is consistent with the Local Partnership Program guidelines and the adopted competitive program. Therefore, staff recommends your approval of tab 57 as presented in the recommendation.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Alvarado and a second by Commissioner Burke. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We are down to 73. Robert, you're on. Where are you, Robert?
Right here.
Okay.
Commissioners, tab 73 is an action item to approve a total of 96 SP1 project baseline agreements and establish these agreements as basis for project delivery and monitoring in accordance with the Commission's SP1 accountability and transparency guidelines. This item includes 3 recommendations as follows. Approve 64 baseline agreements as provided in attachment A. Staff finds these agreements consistent with SP1 accountability and transparency guidelines and the interim shop guidelines. 2, provisionally approve the remaining 32 baseline agreements for the Active Transportation Program, Local Partnership Program, Solutions for Congested Corridor Program, and Trade Corridor Enhancement Program as provided in attachment B. The updated baseline agreements will be presented at the January 2019 meeting. The SP1 accountability and transparency guidelines emphasizes on project accountability with regard to scope, cost, schedule, and expected benefits. Furthermore, the respective program guidelines provide requirements on the need to quantify the expected benefits. To ensure these projects are meeting the intent of SP1 guidelines, the respective program guidelines, the provisional approval will allow projects to move forward and provide additional time needed to ensure the infrastructure and non-infrastructure benefits are sufficiently documented. Staff would also like to note that the Route 10 Corridor Contract 1 project is located in San Bernardino County, not LA County. And finally, 3, staff recommends approval of amendment to the baseline agreement template to include a benefits form. This form would document the expected quantifiable infrastructure and non-infrastructure benefits and standardize the unit of measurement reporting for reporting purposes. The form would be required for the Active Transportation Program, Local Partnership Program, Solutions for Congested Corridor Program, Trade Corridor Enhancement Program projects subject to baseline agreements. Forms will be available by October 30th and expected to be returned to staff by December 30th. A sample is provided in attachment E. To conclude, staff would like to recognize Caltrans has been a responsible and diligent partner throughout the baseline agreement process. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions? Yes, Commissioner Medapper.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent report, and I really like the project benefit form. I think it's a good way for the public to be able to see the results of what these projects are doing, and I think it helps the accountability piece. So good work on that, and I'm happy to move approval.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Medapper. Any second? Commissioner Burke. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We're down to 85 now. Teresa, thank you.
Commissioners, item 85 is an action item. This is a STIP amendment. The San Bernardino County Transportation Authority, proposes a STIP amendment to program an AB 3090 cash reimbursement in order to advance the construction of the Redlands Passenger Rail Project in San Bernardino County. They will be using their local funds to advance the project. This project has congested corridors, funding, and local partnership funding program in 1819, while the STIP is programmed in 2021. The reimbursement for this project will be spread over 2 years, beginning in fiscal year 2021. They are ready to proceed at this time. They will be requesting an allocation from the other 2 programs as well. This amendment was noticed at the August Commission meeting as required by STIP guidelines. Staff recommends your approval.
Yes, STIP
does too.
Very good. Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Alvarado, second by anybody? There we go. Commissioner Medapper, okay. Any discussion, any questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll go now to item number 110. Matthew.
Commissioners, I'll be over here this time. Tab 110 is an action item to approve a Solutions for Congested Corridors program allocation request of $65 million for construction, a local partnership competitive program allocation request of $10,831,000 for construction, and a local partnership formulaic program allocation request of $6,169,000 for construction, all for the Redlands Passenger Rail Project in San Bernardino County. Staff has reviewed these requests and finds them all consistent with each program's guidelines. Therefore, staff recommends your approval.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Medapper and a second from Commissioner Burke. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, I think we can go get Commissioner Inman so she can do her job. Okay.
Get out of jail free.
Here I go. I was Patricia, just see if you guys forgot me. Item 58, okay.
Sure, Madam Vice Chair, Madam Chair.
Oh, I got to notable.
I'm confused as to who's up now.
Oh, okay, out of sight, out of mind.
Item 58 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the A2 Elk Grove Capital Southeast Connector Project. The Elk Grove City Council adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gometti, a second by Commissioner Van Konynenberg. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 59, please.
Item 59 is an action item. This is the final subsequent EIR for the Valley Transportation Authority's Bay Area Rapid Transit Silicon Valley Phase 2 Extension Project. The Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority Board of Directors adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends your approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gardino, a second by Commissioner Gometti. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item number 60.
Item 60 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the Vista Canyon Metrolink Station Project. The Santa Clara City Council adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends your approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Burke, a second by Commissioner Medapper. Is there any discussion on this item?
I've been working on imitation.
Hey, okay, all in favor? Anybody opposed? But abstaining, that motion carries. Item 61.
Item 61 is an action item. This is the final EIR and addendum for the La Quinta Village Complete Streets project. The La Quinta City Council adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends your approval.
So moved.
Okay, got the voices right there, so. I'm going to make them quit singing a duet there. We have a motion by Commissioner Arp, a second by Commissioner Medaffer. Any discussion? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Okay, we will now move on to item 62.
Item 62 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the State Route 79 realignment project. Caltrans adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends your approval.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Alvarado, a second by Commissioner Gilmetti. Is there discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Next item, 63.
Item 63 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the State Route 132 West Freeway Expressway project. Caltrans adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends your approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Van Konynenberg, a second by Commissioner Arp. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. We'll move on to item 64.
Item 64 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the Altamont Corridor Express extension. This is from Lathrop to Ceres to Merced project. The Board of Commissioners of the San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends your approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Van Konynenberg, a second by Commissioner Alvarado, I believe. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. We'll move on to item 65. Robert.
Commissioners, tab 65 is an information item that will be presented by Caltrans. This is the first set of program progress reports for the SP1 programs.
Are you back in a new job?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Assemblymember Frazier, is this the 2-minute or the 3-minute version?
We'll recognize, we want to hear you out, Jim.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. My name is Jim Davis, and I'm the acting SP1 Program Manager, and I'll be providing the report on Caltrans' first program project report on the SP1 program. The program progress report is required by the SP1 Accountability and Transparency Guidelines provided by the Commission. This report is for Commission actions done through August. It does not include any action you took in this October meeting, per guidelines. SB1 was signed into law 17 months ago. SB1 gas tax went into effect 11 months ago. During this period, the Commission, Caltrans, and our local partners have worked together to deliver a multi-billion-dollar program. Workshops were held, 40 plus, policy and guidelines were established. To implement the programs, SB1 program project requirements were developed, candidate project proposals delivered and generated, and projects were evaluated and programs were adopted. In the meantime, projects were being fast-tracked and brought forward for allocations as it reflected in this presentation. 5 programs were adopted: the SHOP, the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, the Solutions to Congested Corridors Program, the Local Partnership Program, and the Active Transportation Program. Added to that is the Local Streets and Roads guidelines to make 6 program guidelines adopted. I'm going to highlight just the highlight benefits from each one of these programs for you. For the SHOP, the projects that are being funded with SB1 dollars will generate 4,600 lane miles of pavement, 898 improvements to culverts, 292 improvements to bridges, and 7,122 improvements to traffic management system and elements. For the TCEP program, we'll have 80 new lane miles of HOV or hot lanes, 34 mixed flow lanes, 10 new track miles, 7 miles of truck climbing or auxiliary lanes, and 7 grade separation or rail crossings. For the SCCP program, we'll have 141 lane miles of HOV or hot lanes, 57 operational improvements, 36 local road improvements, 11 bridge improvements, and 11 miles of new track. For the LPP competitive program, we'll have 59 new transit vehicles, 53 local road improvements, 27 intersection modifications, 24 miles of HOV hot lanes, and 17 grade separations or rail crossings. For the ATP program, we'll have 250 miles of new bike lanes, 132 new crosswalks, 67 miles of sidewalk, 219 programs, that's education, encouragement, etc., and 6 plans. For these programs, the Commission has programmed $9.3 billion worth of projects in the last few Commission meetings. $9.3 billion. We have now, the Commission has now allocated of that $9.3 billion, nearly $1.5 billion, and that's considerably more in this next 2 days. In addition, we have 21 SHOP projects and 7 ATP projects that actually have been awarded and are out in construction. Remember, this is an update as of August 31st, so there's more things that have been going on. And that concludes my report, and I'm open for questions.
We have questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that was an informational item. We'll move on to item 66.
Okay, Commissioners, item 66 is an information item on the final closeout report of the fiscal year 2017-2018 Major Damage Restoration Reservation. Item 67 is an action item seeking amendment to the Major Damage Restoration Reservation for fiscal year 2018 and 2019. We may need to update the agenda just to note that Bruce DeTerra will be providing a report on item number 66 in lieu of Amar Bhatta, who was scheduled, and then also requesting approval of item number 67. Before he gets started, staff recommends approval of item 67. Go ahead, Bruce.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, I can be even more efficient than Jim Davis if need be, because I know we have things on the agenda. But very quickly, since Don Anderson gave such a compelling presentation earlier today on their emergency response, this is very timely that we bring this report to you now. So the department is able to act immediately upon emergencies because of the G11 delegation that you've provided to the department that enables us to get right out there and start working to repair highways as quickly as possible, and we can come back after the fact to ask for additional money if we need it. We have a reservation built into the shop, and it's currently $140 million for the current fiscal year, and item 67 will be asking for an increase to that because we have exceeded the $140 million in expenditures thus far. Shoot, I didn't do that, did I? There was a question about federal reimbursement, we have to go through a process to establish the eligibility of an emergency project for federal reimbursement, and there's a formal process, the damage assessment form, a DAF. So as we do the projects, we do that form, we submit it to the federal government, and Vince looks at it and says, oh, Caltrans did it, it must be good, and he checks the box and says yes, but not always. Sometimes they say no, that there's something within the project that some aspect of it is not federally eligible. There is $100 million annually to share across the entire country for all of these needs. And as Mr. Anderson pointed out, he's used 25% of that by himself and his teams up in Shasta County this summer. We are not going to be getting the full amount. going forward. We currently have approximately $1.2 billion in outstanding requests to the federal government. When there are very large disasters, sometimes there's a special appropriation by Congress to provide additional money, and we take advantage of that. Our delegation puts in California projects, and I'll be pointing something out where we did that and got a little bit more money than what we've reported in the attached report. Let's see. So there are major damage restoration, which is the immediate response. This is what you saw Mr. Anderson talk about, where the crews were out there even as the fire was still being fought. You saw this being done as well down in District 5 with the mudslides they had there, where the crews were out immediately responding. And then there's something, permanent restoration, where we come in after the facility is opened, it is open to the public, to come in and rebuild the facility if needed to the full current standards. And that's done with regular shop money. That's no longer the emergency. The emergency is to get the road open so that the communities are connected again, and we can get emergency vehicles and services through. As we do these projects, they very much and very often benefit the asset management targets that we have as well. We had that in the Montecito mudslides, where we came in and had to do substantial repairs and replacement to bridges. Those are fixed 500 bridges, and we get the pavement is reestablished. You saw the new guardrail. We do get credit under the asset management for these kinds of things, for both the major damage and also the permanent restoration. We're also undertaking a proactive to avoid damage so that we don't have to come forward and ask for money. Examples were, as was mentioned earlier, cleaning out culverts with our crews, addressing bridge scour before the bridge falls down, clearing dead and dying trees from the drought and the beetle infestation so that fire intensity is reduced along the highways, and also we reduce the risk of trees falling on the highway itself. So for 2017-18, we started off with a $140 million, and that it was in the 2016 shop, not the 2018 shop. And it has increased to $550 million. This is the actual amount from the year. And that was due to a variety of incidents, which you've been familiar with and has been brought forward. Includes the Thomas and Tubbs fires, the Montecito mudslide, a portion of the Big Sur Mud Creek slide, and other disasters. So we came back to the commission periodically to ask for an increase. And so these are the totals that we asked for. We have $300 million approximately approved damage assessment forms from the federal government that established our eligibility to ask for the funds. We have more that are in process. We have been reimbursed for 16-17, $67 million, which is 67% of what the regular total national amount would be, and that is because of a special appropriation. Your report, I believe, says that we had less than that. It was 20, I don't have that open in front of me, but it was less, but I have this is newer information from when the report was produced. So for 2018-19, we have already exceeded the $140 million in expenditures for the current fiscal year, and we're coming back in item 67 and asking for an increase of $200 million to enable us to cover the amount we've already gone over and also be prepared for the next set. And we anticipate this will be through March, but if we have a very heavy winter, particularly if it hits the burn areas, we may be back before then. In the winter of 15-16, I believe it was, that was a very brutal winter, and we had approximately $1 billion in emergency projects that came forward. So assuming the approval of item 67, then the new amount would be $340 million that we have. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions you may have.
Approval to 67. Second.
Any discussion on this? Oh, I'm sorry, I should confirm that we have a motion by Commissioner Gometti and a second by Commissioner Van Konynenberg for the record. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now move to item 68. Richard.
Commissioners, item 68 is an action item where the department is requesting the amendment of 28 new projects, updates to 41 program projects, and to initiate the development of one long lead project in the 2018 shop. Of the new projects, 14 are major damage restoration and 6 are collision reduction safety projects. The other new projects consist of 2 bridge preservation and 6 roadway preservation projects that will address 2 of the primary asset classes defined under Senate Bill 1. Please note there are a couple of corrections as shown on the change list. On attachment number 2, project number 5, there was a revision to the performance measures, and on attachment number 3, project number 10, there was a notation that was deleted. All are consistent with the Transportation Asset Management Plan. Commission staff has reviewed these 2018 SHOP amendments and recommends commission approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Madaffer, a second by Commissioner Alvarado. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Item 69, Lori.
Yes, Commissioners. Item 69 is an action item to consider the project scope change request for the City of Laverne Regional Commuter Bicycle Gap Closure Project in Los Angeles County. The project involves bicycle improvements to several major east-west and north-south corridors throughout the City of Laverne. During the design phase of this project, the city ran into some issues with the feasibility of the original scope as proposed in the application. The issues are mainly due to conflicts with an upcoming Metrolink Gold Line Station project, and because some of the streets with proposed improvements do not have adequate widths for the improvements. To mitigate these scope revisions, the city has been working with Caltrans to develop a reasonable scope that still meets the goals of the program and retains or increases the project's walking and biking benefits. For example, adding Class 2 bike lanes on parallel streets and adding intersection improvements. The book item details the additional scope and the removed scope. In the overall analysis, it's been determined that the proposed scope change will still result in a project that meets the active transportation program's purpose of increasing bicycling and walking, and that it will result in little or no impact to the overall transportation benefits and will provide an increase in the bicycling benefits. And the local bicycling community supports the revisions. Commission staff supports the Caltrans recommendation and recommends that the commission approve this scope amendment.
We have a motion by Commissioner Burke, a second by Commissioner Madaffer. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Okay, I've been told that item 70 and item 71 have both been withdrawn.
Yes,
That's correct? Okay. Then we'll move to item 72.
Okay, Commissioners, this is an action item to approve a fund transfer project amendment for the City of Davis project, providing safe passage connecting Montgomery Elementary and Olive Drive. As a revision in the 2019 Active Transportation Program guidelines adopted in May of this year, the Commission now allows implementing agencies to move funds between programmed phases. The City of Davis proposes to move $380,000 in plan specifications and estimates funds and $32,000 in right-of-way funds, both programmed in fiscal year 17-18 to construction in fiscal year 19-20 to bring construction funding to $3,540,000. The policy states, however, that these requests cannot be made in the same year as the funds are programmed, which is in this case for the City of Davis. However, because this is the first request of this kind, staff misinterpreted the guidelines and allowed this request. Staff recommends approving this request as a one-time only exception.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Alvarado and a second by Commissioner Burke. And so is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Okay, I believe we have completed our work for the day. And so thank you, everyone. Got a lot of work done today. So we'll see everybody tomorrow.